I Have No Body, a Hubert and Flayn story. Written by Anna. Read by Arashi. They don't know what the artifact does, only that it somehow survived their ballista attack on Shambhala. A violet creststone at the center of a black-bone tesseract, pulsing like an organ at the blast site. They can't be sure what magic it will and won't react to, so they travel back to Enbar on foot. Flayn leads Hubert from the wreckage with open palms, naked and belly up, while Hubert snaps his jaws, insisting in a venomous way that he should be the one to carry it, as if Flayn shows any resistance.
"It feels familiar,"
is all Flayn says.
"Alive in a way that is different."
Her lips quirk up in a disgusting show of pity.
"Like Edelgard. Is that why you want to hold it?"
They stop to make camp at the edge of a meadow, out of sight from the main road. The grass stretches oceanic ahead of them, and flower heads glow like insects in the light of the moon. It's quite beautiful, which makes Hubert sneer. He suspects it's precisely why Flayn decided to claim sudden fatigue. She sits a few feet ahead of him, staring silently at the landscape, idly rotating two skewered fish over an open flame. Hubert joins her when he's finished pitching their tent. It's good. The fish. Briny and tart and satisfying. Hubert even considers saying so, but Flayn speaks first.
"What is your favorite color?"
she asks, turning her gaze on him. Her eyes, Hubert decides, are like mouths, gaping and toothed. In hunger, they set upon him, sucking words from his own mouth before he can string them together. "What?" he responds dumbly. "Why?"
"Because we don't know anything about each other."
"That's not true," Hubert says. "Why does it matter?" She shoots him a nauseating smile.
"What's my favorite color, then?"
"Green." Well, of course he doesn't know.
"It's forget-me-not blue,"
she huffs. Hubert scoffs and climbs to his feet. Anything he learns about Flayn is too much. This is ridiculous. We aren't children.
"Are friends something only children have?"
Flayn interjects, asking the question like she might not know the answer. He spits on the ground and turns toward their tent. "Should we braid each other's hair too?" A purple glow from where he'd left the artifact throbs through the tarp.
"How old are you, Hubert?"
Flayn calls after him. He glances over his shoulder, and her eyes take him up again like a well-chewed bone. 27, he says. His shoulders curl forward in petulance. As he ducks inside, he hears her mutter,
"You are just a child."
Clouds now huddle in masses above them, so tight they cover the moon. Only light fog leaks through the cracks, dusting the damp grass like hot breath down someone's neck. It invades Hubert's lungs as he heaves in a sigh. His chest shudders around the fresh, foreign air. His eyes flutter closed for barely a millisecond, but he can practically hear Flayn puff out her chest regardless. "I was just blinking," Hubert mutters. "Go inside."
"You need to sleep,"
Flayn scolds, planting her hands on her hips.
"Just let me keep watch."
For a moment, Hubert imagines Flayn as mother. Then he imagines Dorothea, smacking him upside the head for the thought. Flayn groans, and he imagines her as child.
"It's been 6 years, you know."
"It's been much longer. You stood by the church," Hubert recites like a psalm.
"What else do you want me to do, Hubert?"
There's a small wobble to Flayn's tone. It's the closest Hubert's come to hearing her express exasperation. He lets it sting his eyes, and turns to blink away the conversation. He doesn't like it when she says his name. He can't pretend it isn't him she's speaking to. She says,
"I let my family die for this."
He scoffs. "So did I." He smells smoke and inside-out bodies as he remembers Flayn turning her back on her father, her goddess, her Rhea, trudging through Garrigmock's courtyard, gummy gore clinging to her heels from between the cobblestones. Hubert remembers wondering where she'd learned to hold a lance properly, where she'd learned to wield it easily. And that is why he cannot trust her. Hubert cannot fathom turning against his own people. Even if Edelgard were wrong, if she was the church, and the church was her revolution, he could not leave. There's a hole where his head should be, and the logic passes right through. Of course he objectively prefers this outcome, Flayn's ancient well of knowledge at their own disposal. Her sharp body a lance of its own kind in Her Majesty's hands. But high reward begets high risk, and if Flayn could change her mind once... Edelgard handles all of that. Conclusions, plans of action. Edelgard's so generous, to a fault even, because she has given her trust to Flayn, and it's splitting Hubert at the seams to know that he does not agree.
Hubert?
Flayn prods, sticking her neck out from the tent. When had she gone inside? Hubert shakes his head like a wet dog, trying and failing to chase the fog from his brain.
Hubert,
Flayn says again.
Help me with this.
She turns to show him her back. One of her curls is tangled around a button like a wasp in a spider's web. It's ridiculous, honestly. Hubert's been wearing the same pair of pants for 3 days now, while with each sunrise, Flayn pulls out a new, fluffy, infinitely buttoned dress. Hubert uses a fingernail to dig beneath the button, freeing the thick, taut strands. Her hair is soft, like running water, healthy, in a way his bone body can't recognize. When she smiles over her shoulder, shakes out her curls, and flounces back inside the tent, he is reminded of Ferdinand's Cloudfire mane. He thinks of how Dorothea likes to dress, Lysithea, and he thinks of how Lysithea preens. He wonders if everyone Edelgard has collected are not all just children who want pretty things. And if this is true, what does that mean if he is different? In the faint purple glow of their pitiful sleeping quarters, Hubert watches Flayn take breath after ramshackle breath. They're shaky, in a way that betrays lack of skill, like breathing is something she just learned how to do. Their shoulders pressed together with unsettling corporeality. Every shift has some part of him knocking into some part of her, and Hubert's about ready to sleep outside in the rain. He manages to shuffle onto his stomach, ready to plant his knees beneath himself, when Flayn rolls toward him.
Are you awake?
She asks. No. Flayn props herself up on her elbows. Thunder crackles outside of the tent, and Hubert sighs, lowering himself back down on their thin spread of blankets.
I can't sleep either, she says. I've never been good at it.
Yeah, Hubert admits. Me too. A shy smile spreads across Flayn's face.
That's the first thing you've told me about yourself, she whispers. My first Hubert fact.
I'm glad you find my insomnia exciting, Hubert drawls. He rolls onto his back and spreads his hands out at the base of his ribs. He curls his fingers underneath the bones, trying to grab at the empty space inside him. It's getting smaller, he thinks. My favorite color is brown, he says, and Flayn outright laughs.
That makes a lot of sense,
she muses. Does it? It's not even true. Then Flayn really looks at him, swallows him up. Or maybe he just climbs inside. What? He asks.
We have nearly the same color eyes.
Hubert blinks at that. What is it with you and colors?
Nothing,
Flayn hums.
It just reminded me.
What? Hubert pushes.
It made me think of Rhea,
Flayn sighs.
You kind of remind me of her.
Is this some sort of attempt at humor? Hubert asks. He sucks all the warmth from the tent as he says it, and suddenly they're both choking.
No,
Flayn says carefully. A rose of chilled vapor blooms from her mouth, growing toxic at the slithering light. Do you expect me to beg for an explanation? Hubert demands, which, of course, is begging in its own right. He sits up on his knees, the balls of his feet pressing into the ground, tendons ready to snap. Flayn shrugs, and Hubert honestly wants to push her.
It's just... I guess I sometimes wonder if you believe in Edelgard's cause, or if you believe in Edelgard.
Are you questioning my loyalty? Hubert snaps, and Flayn's gaze hardens. There's a weight collecting at the base of his esophagus. He can't tell if it's laughter or just plain vomit.
The exact opposite, actually. I joined the resistance to oppose the church, not to worship Edelgard like a new saint.
She deserves it, Hubert hears himself say. The conversation's getting away from him. Flayn has stabbed a taloned finger through his throat, and now the words are leaking out, curdled and undigested.
No one deserves blind faith.
He knows. He knows. But he doesn't understand why Flayn has to do this. Dig inside him, roll around all these questions he doesn't have answers to. Why can't she just fall in line? It's easy. So much easier.
Hubert,
Flayn starts, voice remorseful and grotesquely soft. Enough, he commands. I hate you. You who stood by while Rhea executed the likes of the very people you now sleep beside. Do you remember Lord Lenato, poor Ash's father? Empathy does not agree with Hubert, genuine or otherwise. It slides sickly down his tongue. But the glassy film that floods Flayn's eyes makes for a good, salty chaser.
I do,
Flayn says.
I remember Lenato. I remember his son, whom Rhea had me heal over and over, until she could squeeze a confession out of him.
Finally, she looks away from him. Hubert thinks of the daggers he's held to so many arteries, the exact parts he knows he can carve from a man's neck, and still preserve the ability for speech. He feels Flayn's fangs against his own carotid as she says,
I am ashamed, Hubert. And it's okay if you are too.
Suddenly, Hubert is outside. His hands are shaking. But maybe they aren't his. It's nearly stopped raining, and he's nearly running. Flayn is wrong. She really is. Hubert does not feel regret. He cannot be humiliated. But Flayn is right. Where the other eagles see miserable love, Flayn looks at him like he's a mirror. Love is so nothing. Love is transferred between bodies. Hubert does not have a body of his own. He doesn't want one. Flayn's is 1,000 years brand new. The sun is starting to rise. It punches the sky bruised purple. There are small flowers like eyes pushing up through the ground at his feet, and Hubert bends down to rip some up. He crushes the petals between his hands, and they disintegrate into powder, settling between the lines of his palms, making themselves at home in their killer. His fingertips come away forget-me-not blue. As morning shatters, Hubert makes his way back to the tent. It shakes like it had in the rain. An unexpected fear seizes Hubert's chest. He pushes past the entrance, miasma gathering in his veins. But there is no assailant. Flayn lies alone, thrashing against the blankets, skin slick and ashen gray. It's uncomfortable to watch, cruel in an insignificant way that sits out of place amongst Hubert's other wrongdoings. So he kneels at Flayn's side, planting his hands on her narrow shoulders. He expects her to wake shrieking as soon as he touches her. He imagines she might bruise under his unclean touch. She doesn't. He shakes her harder and harder, banging her scapula against the ground. He can't believe she doesn't snap in half. Flayn! Hubert bellows, taking her head between his palms. Her eyes flutter open, and her own hands fly to the underside of Hubert's jaw. Molten faith floods his body, so sweet and searching for something. He can't even tense against the sensation, and the lack of control feels like a threat. His own magic gathers against his palms. But then, Flayn grins at him.
Thank you.
She sighs. Her hands slide down and away from his neck, and there is such genuine belief in the way that she looks at him.
I couldn't tell if I was dreaming. What day is it?
It's just the morning, Hubert says. The end.